This video is being recorded after about 5 o'clock this Wednesday. For those asking, we are doing a podcast tonight. It will go live on the channel at 8:30, so if you're interested, please be sure to check that out. Intended plan at the time of recording is that we're going to have a look back at some of the big fights in 2017 and discuss the year that has just been. In this particular video, we are doing a discussion about none other than Chris Eubank Jr. I always get a bit uncomfortable when it's been 2 or 3 weeks on the channel without doing a video on the Eubanks. They are, one of the most entertaining power couples in the sport of boxing. And over the New Year and Christmas period, they popped up with a rather interesting weigh-in that I have seen being discussed in several areas on my sort of boxing Facebook, boxing Twitter, etc. I'm going to read you out a tweet from the official and verified Twitter account of Chris Eubank Jr. He says, "The super middleweight limit is 12 stone, 168 pounds. I am not a super middleweight, but that will not stop me dominating the division, starting with George Groves on February 17th. Hashtag NextGen, hashtag Team Eubank." He has then posted a video of a pair of feet stepping onto a scale. Now, one presumes they are Chris Eubank Jr.'s legs and feet that you can see on the scale. The video has been viewed over 96,000 times at the time of recording. And the video appears to show Chris Eubank Jr. weighing in at 11 stone, 10 pounds and 4 ounces. In other words, just over 164 pounds. Now, for those who don't know, and I'm sure the majority of my viewers do, but for those who don't know, the weight for middleweight is typically 160 pounds as the upper limit, and the weight for super middleweight is 168 pounds. So Chris Eubank Jr. at 164 is weighing in the super middleweight division, but is weighing in midway through the super middleweight division. Now, as most boxing fans will know, it is customary in boxing for fighters to cut weight to make their division. So, frankly, a guy who weighs in outside the ring at 164 when he's still 2 months away from fight night, usually that person would be looking to suck themselves down. Usually that person will be looking to weigh in at 160 pounds or potentially even lower, potentially even at 154 pounds, the light middleweight division. Typically, it wouldn't be uncommon at all for a fighter 2 months out from a fight to shed a lot of weight during training camp and to dehydrate and cut down so that they were substantially below the outside, that sort of 164 pound weight. So Chris Eubank Jr. is giving the impression that he stays in such good shape all year round and he's constantly ready to go, he's constantly in fight shape, that despite the fact that the George Groves fight is still, well, even from the time of recording, it's 6-7 weeks away, he is already not only on weight, but substantially underweight. 4 pounds under the super middleweight limit. Now, I'm going to start by saying that I treat this with a level of skepticism. I do. And there are reasons to treat it with a level of skepticism. I am unaware that there is conclusive proof in the video on Twitter that it is actually Chris Eubank Jr. stepping on scales. I'm also unaware how accurate the scales are. We all know that set of scales. There's one in where my parents live, which tells me that I'm still about 12 stone. There are always those set of scales that may be inaccurate. So I'm going to treat this with some skepticism because Chris Eubank Jr. was a massive middleweight. In fact, and I hope I'm not mistaken in saying this, I actually believe I've been present at a Chris Eubank Jr. weigh-in where at first weigh-in he actually failed to make the middleweight limit of 160. And I believe I'm correct in saying, and please comment in the section below to let me know if I'm right or if I'm wrong, that there has actually been more than one occasion where Chris Eubank Jr. didn't make the 160 pound limit at his first attempt. Now, at no stage has Chris Eubank Jr. completely failed to make 160. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he had fights called off because of it. But what I'm saying is this is a guy who, on multiple occasions, took more than one attempt to weigh in to hit 160 pounds. That is an indication of being very, very, very big at the weight and being someone who's having to cut weight and drain weight in order to make the weight class. It's not conclusive, but it's an indication. Also, if we cast our mind back to Eubank's fights at 160, perhaps the Billy Joe Saunders fight, perhaps the Spike O'Sullivan fight, instantly you can recollect that Chris Eubank Jr. was the substantially bigger man in there. What I'm getting at is Chris Eubank Jr. was a huge guy for 160. He was a guy who, on occasion, didn't even make 160 at the first time of asking on the scales. Now, are we truly to believe that a guy who weighs in 6-7 weeks before a fight at 164 pounds is missing weight at 160 pounds some weeks afterwards? Are we truly to believe that? I am not so sure. I am not so sure. The other thing I would say is if Eubank Jr. genuinely is weighing in at 164, he would have actually been fighting substantially heavier opponents for the majority of his career at middleweight. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders weighed in at 160 when Saunders fought Eubank. What do you think Billy Joe Saunders was on fight night that night? Well, I'll make a bold prediction and say Saunders was over the super middleweight limit. You know, I don't think Saunders would have been probably even in the 160s. You know, Saunders would have been up in the 170s. So, yeah, I'm sceptical about Chris Eubank Jr. weighing 164. I'm not 100% sure that I believe it to be true. And I think if you look back at his middleweight career, if you look at the size of him, you look how big he was compared to his opponents, and you look at the fact that, being frank, he did struggle. Well, as I've already said, he's weighed in above 160 for certain weigh-ins. It does lead you to believe that there may be some reason for scepticism. However, in this part of the video, let's put the scepticism aside. I've expressed my scepticism to you guys. I've disclaimed it as much as I can. Let's for a second imagine that this is true. Now, if Eubank is legitimately 164 pounds, he says he's not a super middleweight. Now, 164 pounds is within the super middleweight, you know, limit, but it would be very, very, very untypical for a super middleweight to weigh 164 pounds several weeks prior to a fight. If you look at other guys in that World Boxing Super Series, Jürgen Bremer, he's been up at 175. Callum Smith, what's he, 6'3", 6'4". George Groves, monster frame for super middleweight. You know, these guys, I bet they're well in the 170s. Maybe even in the 180s, you know. Look, George Groves, 6-7 weeks out before a fight. Super middleweight limit is 12 stone. Would Groves be under 13 stone? I don't know. I don't know. You know, Eubank would be massively outsized if he legitimately is 164 pounds as a walk-around weight. And I think that's the impression he's trying to give from his Twitter. You know, he's trying to say, look, I'm the small guy. Look, I'm the guy who doesn't care about weight divisions. I just take the big fights, etc. So if he's trying to give that impression, fair enough. But it would be a huge disadvantage going into a guy like George Groves. It would be a huge, huge, huge disadvantage. Because if Groves is 13 stone and dehydrates to 12 stone, it's quite easy for him to get back up to 13 stone on fight night by rehydrating. Essentially, he's lost that weight by dehydrating. So you can put the weight back on by rehydrating. It's not as simple as that, but yeah, in an essence, it would be easy for George Groves to cut weight and put some of that weight back on. Now with Eubank, it would be very different. Because if Eubank is 164 pounds 7 days a week, and then he weighs in at 164 pounds, he can't just go and chuck on 10 pounds the day after the weigh-in. Yeah, what's he going to do? Sit there eating Mars bars all day? You know, he can't just rehydrate up. So if Eubank genuinely is 164 pounds, then it's likely that's the kind of weight he's going to be when he steps into the ring. And if that were to be the case, let's say he stepped into the ring at 164 pounds, I wouldn't be surprised if he was facing a 15, 16, 17, 18 pound disadvantage against George Groves. And that would be a huge disadvantage. The elite of sport is about small margins. Look at, I don't know, look at the lengths people go to get the tiniest percentage edge in a sport. Elite of sport, to me, 9 times out of 10 is about small margins. If the Eubanks are legitimately prepared to step into the biggest fight of their life with a £15 disadvantage, I would be surprised, because I think they are more shrewd and more calculated than that. Look at boxers who have moved up from the weight classes before. Look at Arthur Abraham. He was known as a monstrous puncher at middleweight. He stepped up to super middleweight. Suddenly the KO stopped. Suddenly he was going the distance with Paul Smith. With those kind of guys. Eubank Jr. for me was never the biggest puncher at middleweight. I know he scored a big knockout of Avni Yildirim, but potentially that was a one-off. He's not going to be going up to 168 and carrying the same power as the guys in that weight class if he is legitimately a 164-pound man fighting 180-pound men. Almost giving you a bit of slang there. On a related note, Eubank Jr. is used to getting punched in the mouth by guys like Billy Joe Saunders, and I appreciate recently he has fought guys like Reynold Quinlan and Arthur Abraham, but he's yet to face an established puncher at the super middleweight division, and I believe that George Groves represents an established puncher. Let's not forget the devastating knockouts of the likes of Jamie Cox and Fedor Chudinov in 2017 alone. Is there a possibility, and I know there's this legend about Eubank sparring heavyweights, etc., but is there a possibility that Eubank could take one on the chin from a guy who weighs 15 stone more than him? Sorry, 15 pounds more than him. 15 stone would be a stretch, even for the Eubanks. 15 pounds more than him, and he could just go to pieces. I think that is a definite possibility. So I think this is an interesting bit of news. If it is true, and if you believe it's true, then I think we have to acknowledge that this is a massive negative for the Eubanks going into a fight with George Groves. I appreciate Eubank is a very good fighter, but so is George Groves. And to overcome a weight difference like that, to take punches from a much bigger man, for your punches to have the same power against a much bigger man, Eubank will have to be something very special. And whilst he's very good, I am yet to be convinced he's as special as he would need to be. Is it just that the Eubanks are creating more hype and more mythology around their warrior's name stepping up in weight classes? That's another possibility to consider. Or like me, are you very sceptical of these results to begin with? Do you believe that he was ever actually 164? My guess is he's probably more like 170, 171, 172. I'm not saying he's a massive super middleweight. I'm not saying he's as big as a Groves or a Callum Smith. But I do think Eubank is a big guy, and I don't personally believe. I think that if he was legit 164 as a walk-around weight, I think we'd still be seeing him at middleweight. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Leave your comments in the section below. Let me know your take on this story. If you've enjoyed it, please take the time to hit the thumbs up button. Please subscribe if you are new. As always, do appreciate you guys tuning in. Many thanks indeed.